And it is our final hour of America's Forum on this Thursday. Welcome back. I'm J.D. Hayworth, and right beside me now, to my right, screen left, Ed Berliner. Ed, it's good to have you back.
Good to be back home, spending a couple of days in New York.
That's right. You were in New York doing a great job for our friend Steve Malzberg, and I was away yesterday in San Diego, and one of my old colleagues is going to take a really big trip next week that we need to talk about.
Tell us about it.
I'll be happy to, sir. It's my old buddy Ed Royce, now the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He will lead a bipartisan congressional delegation to some of the most unstable regions of Ukraine. The group is preparing to meet with top government officials there to examine issues related to Russia's military buildup on Ukraine's east border. Royce defended Ukraine's show of force this week in response to takeovers of government buildings by people believed to be Russian agents. In an email, Royce wrote, and I quote, "Ukraine is in crisis, and the U.S. should do what it can to bolster its government against Russian aggression." And on Wednesday, Chairman Royce warned, the U.S. has underestimated Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he is stepping up his efforts to destabilize and possibly annex the eastern part of the Ukraine. Obviously, a very ominous assessment. And if I'm not mistaken, if all is working correctly, Congressman Ed Royce joins us now. Mr. Chairman, welcome back.
Hello, J.D. Thank you.
It was good to have you, sir.
It's good to be with you again. Good to hear your voice.
Well, I tell you, as good as it is to have you, the Ukraine is presenting some problems, and my friend Ed Berliner is going to open the questions. Ed,
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. It's a question that I've been asked by a lot of people when it comes down to the Ukraine discussion, and that is, can America really seriously drop a hammer on Vladimir Putin to do something of consequence? And the only reason I point this out is because the president recently said, what you've already seen is the Russian economy weaker, capital fleeing out of Russia, and people want to see, what's the evidence of all that?
What's the evidence of the capital flight? There's about $70 billion in capital flight out of Russia, but that, at this point, we haven't really taken any concerted action that would threaten the Russian monopoly on oil and gas in the region. Obviously, if the United States was to announce a national program to export LNG into Ukraine and into Eastern Europe, that would have a marked consequence on the Russian economy, because it's 70% of the Russian exports and 52% of their budget for their military and their government. And they're running huge deficits right now. So you'd actually have a situation, if we were to do this, where we were helping through our exports to stabilize our position, reduce our deficits, and we'd be increasing their deficits hugely, because we would be supplying that market. The instantaneous impact on the stock market in Russia, on Gazprom stock, and on the value of the ruble would also be something that would shake Moscow. But I think ultimately we have to consider that because of our relationship with Eastern Europe, and the fact that if he plays this game here with the Russian minority, what do we do about the Russian minority in the other Baltic states? They're wholly dependent on Russia for gas.
Well, the natural gas issue, I agree with you, and a lot of people have said that's the way to go. But from right now, what you're talking about needs to be done. But it comes again down to that question, right now, what is it that's not being done that can be more than just a threat of condemnation,
right,
but be a real hammer against Putin?
Well, I understand the administration's opposition to the use of fossil fuels, but we have a glut in our market here. We're capping wells, we're flaring gas. I met with a representative of the LNG company down in Louisiana that wants to ship this gas. Of course, this will help our balance of payments, create jobs, ship the excess gas into Eastern Europe. But the administration's adamantly opposed to that because of their opposition to the use of fossil fuels. So we've got a battle going on in the House of Representatives, where in a vote of pretty much a party line vote, legislation was passed out last week out of the Energy and Power Subcommittee to move forward with the approach that I had in my legislation. this would be the enabling language to do it. And the administration is strongly blocking it. So I suspect that as things heat up and we pass this legislation over into the Senate, Harry Reid is going to have to make a decision on whether or not he's going to try to bottle up our gas, or whether he's going to go along with the idea of doing what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs said we should do, which is use it as a strategic weapon, as leverage here, in order to create competition and bring down the monopoly position that Russia has. We've done this before under Reagan, of course. We brought down the price of oil in order to destabilize the Soviet Union at a point in time when they were behaving very aggressively, and you saw the consequences. So it's not as though Putin wouldn't understand what we intend to do, and I think it would help get him to the table.
And Ed, as you mentioned this, and you talk about your efforts and the efforts of others to really push the energy factor, if you will, and I think about LNG, the liquefied natural gas, but I'm also struck by what happened when you and I were serving together in terms of America's energy supply in Alaska, at a place called Anwar, where we were working, and a lot of us said, hey, look, we can get this done. And people said, oh, yeah, well, you do it now. It's a decade away. And, of course, it was stopped. It was sidetracked in the Senate. And, again, time became a factor. So my question, variation of my partner, Ed, here is with the time involved. You're going to be in the Ukraine next week.
Right.
What should happen right now? As you go over to meet with the Prime Minister and the new government of Ukraine, what are you going to be saying to them, and what are you looking to learn in this environment in the here and now?
Well, first of all, as you saw in the breaking story today, Jews in the eastern Ukrainian city of Donetsk, where pro-Russian militants have taken over the government buildings, were told that they have to register with the local Russian-leaning forces there, who are trying to make the city part of Russia. And the Jewish community leaders have been asked to provide a list of the property they own and pay a registration fee, or else have their citizenship revoked. They've been threatened with deportation. They'll have their assets confiscated, they were told, unless they submit this list. So you're seeing the Russians pick up their, just as they did against the Tatar Muslim minority in Crimea, you see them picking up this campaign of intimidation against minority groups. We are going to be meeting with the Jewish community, the Tatar community, the Catholic, as well as the Eastern Orthodox communities. We're going to be in the East and in the West. We're going to meet with Eastern Ukrainian legislators as well as those in the West. And as you know, the election's coming up on May 25th, presidential and local elections. So we want to dialogue with those who have to make the decision of how to pull the country together in the face of these challenges of having a huge Russian black ops, operation going on inside the country right now. How are they going to pull together, carry out that election? How can our delegation work with them to see what we might be able to do, for example, on exports of gas? The report yesterday was in the paper that Russia has again threatened to turn off the valves. We know that Poland is months away from completing its facility that will be an LNG receiving facility, and they've reversed engineered the polls.
Well, that's very interesting what they have going on. Chairman Ed Royce, we're going to have to stop right there. We look forward to hearing back from you following your trip to the Ukraine. Certainly some disturbing remarks about what the Russians may be up to there. We always want to hear from you, and we're back next on America's Forum.